Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be giving you my second NHL mock draft of the offseason, the post-lottery mock draft. A little bit later after the lottery has kind of settled down now. I was on a trip back now, ready to get some uploads going. This is the first one I've been kind of itching to get one out ever since the lottery happened because it was a crazy lottery. Very, very unpredictable. The Islanders jumping all the way up to the first overall pick, jumping up 9 spots. That was a really, really shocking jump up. And then obviously then you had Utah jumping up 10 spots to 4. They were 14th, so they could only move up 10 spots by winning the second overall lottery. So they jumped all the way up to 4 with the 4th overall pick now. So there's definitely going to be some interesting things occurring in this draft. And this definitely shakes up the way the top of the draft is going to look, especially for teams like San Jose and Chicago, who were looking in really good spots at 1 and 2. Now their decisions are a lot more up in the air. So we'll jump right into it. At number 1 with the Islanders, I'm still sticking with Matthew Schaefer. In this case, it's not so much like as San Jose, where San Jose needed that defense prospect to really round out their pool. The Islanders need the best player available, and in my eyes, I think that is Matthew Schaefer. I still think he's the best player available. I still think the consensus around the league and around scouts and around reports and everyone, the consensus seems to be Matthew Schaefer. It's not a clear gap, but everyone seems to be in agreement that he is the first overall pick right now. So I think the Islanders go that direction. This does also, though, with the Islanders winning it, it does open the door for James Hagens back at 1. I highly doubt it, but there's the hometown connection there. He was born in Long Island, so maybe that sneaks in because he is still a worthwhile pick, but I don't foresee it. But it does kind of sneak that thought back in there as he had kind of fallen out of the first overall considerations. At number 2, San Jose, an interesting spot here. I could see them trading back, maybe not back, but I could see them trading the pick just all together for a nice young NHL-ready defenseman or a prospect, like just a player they think can build their decor around. I think that's what they really need. But no trades. I'm not doing any of that unless real solidified reports start coming out, and that's not going to happen until closer to draft day. But sticking and picking Michael Misa. You now have one of, if not the best forward core in the league for the next 10 years once these guys come to the NHL. I mean, I think that San Jose, obviously Schaefer would have been a better fit for them, but a forward core of Macklin Celebrini, Michael Misa, Will Smith, you have William Eklund had a great breakout year. Quinn Musty's been really solid. You have Misa's teammate in Saginaw, and Igor Chernyshov, who was unreal when he went to the OHL to play with Misa. You have Philip Biestet, or Yaroslav Askarov. You have Sam Dickinson. Yeah, Biestet is still there. You have Leo Salim-Elenius, Shakir Mukhamadullin. This team is going to be a juggernaut, I think, if they can keep things together and develop their players properly. Mike Greer's done a wonderful job, and yeah, you're not overly upset with Michael Misa as much as you would have preferred Schaefer. I think you can't really complain about having a 1-2 punch of Misa and Celebrini, or Celebrini and Smith, or you can do so much with those 3 centermen. One of them will move to the wing because I think Will Smith likely moves to the wing, but I could also see Michael Misa playing wing. Regardless, you have 4 elite forwards in your top 6 right now for the next 10 years that you should just be able to build around everywhere else. At number 3, Chicago, another team that's man, wish you could get Michael Misa. I don't see a world where Michael Misa falls to them. I do see a world where the Islanders pick Misa over Schaefer and the Sharks just get Schaefer and are happy with that. There's no way I think 1-2 isn't just Schaefer Misa, unless, like I said, Hagens jumps up because of the Long Island connection. But with Chicago here, it's an interesting spot because they're looking for a real specific type of player to pair with Connor Bedard right now, and I think he needs a winger because he is a centerman, and they're going to keep playing with center. He's going to work on his face-offs, but that all young players tend to struggle with that sort of thing. I'm taking Porter Martone, not necessarily the third best player. He's not my third best player, but I think he's the best fit next to Bedard. I think giving him a big power forward right and then go into the corners, get the puck, work hard down low, and create offense for Bedard. I think that's what they need. You have Anton Friendel, who I feel like he's a bigger version of Bedard, but he can play but he's more of a shoot first kind of guy. And he's another centerman. James Hagens could work. Maybe you take him, move him to the wing to pair with Bedard. But I think Porter Martone is the best fit for the Chicago Blackhawks team. They have so much depth down the middle with Bedard, and then obviously you have Frank Nazar and Oliver Moore. I just don't see a centerman being the pick. If they think they should or will transition someone to the wing, like whether it's James Haggins or it's Connor Bedard, then maybe they go that direction. But I still think a power forward fit next to Bedard is the direction they should go. So I'm going to have them taking Porter Martone. But that pick is going to be very up in the air until rumors start to come out closer till draft time. At number 4, the Utah Hockey Club, now the Utah Mammoth, as they got their actual name released. A really interesting spot here. I really think this pick, another pick that could be on the move. I could see the Penguins trying to move up for this, or I could see a team trading just to get the extra for trading an actual NHL-ready piece to Utah to help them, because I think they want to make that jump to competitiveness. So, you can use this pick as a really good bargaining chip to get some of the top players in the trade market, or maybe trade for some RFAs, something like that. So they have a lot of options here, but yeah, like I said, sticking and picking. I have the Mammoth selecting Anton Frundell. People talk about him as potentially the most NHL-ready guy beyond the top 2. Big, physical guy who has an NHL-ready shot and has really turned it on at the end of the year. I think he also fits what Utah's missing in their young core. They have a lot of great playmakers, but Anton Frundell can be a pure finisher, can be a real guy. You set him up in the circles on the power play, let him just rip 1-2s, fire shots off, pair him up with Clayton Keller or Logan Cooley or Dylan Gunther, and you have yourself a really good setup there. I think Frundell's a really good fit in Utah if they decide to keep this pick. At 5, the Nashville Predators got him taking James Haggins. You can't really complain about getting Haggins at 5. I have him ranked at 3 right now. But yeah, so you can't complain about getting him at 5. I think he's a really solid playmaker, and Nashville's in kind of a best player available. They don't have a real elite level prospect in their pool right now. Take James Haggins, and that's as simple as it is. Great playmaker. Didn't have quite the year people were expecting of him down in the NCAA, but still a really talented player. Tons of playmaking ability. We'll see if he can take that next step up next year, as he probably goes back to BC for another year. Over to the 6th overall pick, the Philadelphia Flyers. Honestly, I think them slipping is almost a blessing in disguise in a way, because before at 4, there wasn't a great fit for what you needed. You need a centerman down the middle who can, feed Michkov, who could be a good complement to Michkov, and you weren't taking. I'm taking Caleb Desnoyers here, who has been a big riser lately. So maybe you would have taken him at 4. But I think Frundell or Haggins or Martone were better players at that spot, and taking Desnoyers at 4 felt like a little bit of a reach for them, even though I think he was the best fit for Michkov. Now at 6, you get Desnoyers to fall into your lap. You're not reaching. This is perfect value for him. I love the fit here, getting a power forward for Michkov to play with, similar to Bedard. Michkov's a lot more of a shoot-first guy, but still has some playmaking instincts. Desnoyers has been tearing up the QMJHL playoffs for that Moncton team that has been an absolute wagon over there. He has been a big riser. There isn't much room for him to rise, but his stock is definitely improved over this last month and a half. So he's had a real good showing lately. I think Philly would be happy to have him. Boston Bruins at 7th overall. I've got him taking Victor Eklund, a guy that I am just in love with. This is, like I said, I believe I mentioned this last episode or last mock. This is one of my guys this draft. I love watching him play. Just plays with such a high energy, high motor, high physicality, and has a lot of skill to go along with it. I think Boston, best player available as well. They have an empty prospect pool pretty much. This is clearly, in my opinion, the best player available, because I think there's a bit of a tier drop off. You have the top 2. I'd say you have those next 5 or 6, which is Martone, Frundell, Haggins, Desnoyers, and Eklund. Those 5 are really solid. So for Boston, I think it's a clear cut. He's the best player on the board, and I love the player. I think he's going to be such an absolute weapon at the next level. At number 8, Seattle, another team that maybe it's a blessing in disguise that they fall to 8. I had him at 6 last time, taking the player I've been taking at 8 in Radim Murtka. They need a defense prospect. Radim Murtka is clearly, in my opinion, the best defense prospect after Matthew Schaefer. A big, right shot, physical defenseman who quickly transitioned from the European style ice and game style over to the CHL, playing in Seattle for the Thunderbirds, and really transitioned well. Has some real good offensive upside, but is really just a great physical, minute munching big defenseman to put in your top 4, and Seattle needs that in their prospect pool. You have Berkeley Catton, Shane Wright, Matty Beniers, Carson Rakoff, Jagger Frorkus. The names go on and on. You don't need another player like that. I think you have a good young core up front. Getting yourself Radamurka is a real good fit here, and also a player who I think you could argue is the best player on the board. It's a fair argument to say he's the 8th best player in this draft class, so really good fit there for Seattle. At Buffalo, again, it's the same pick I had them making last mock, but just 2 spots further down, and that's Roger McQueen. I think Roger McQueen just needs a team to take a shot on him. I think there's some promising things, but there's some sketchy things. Ever since the last mock, things have changed in terms of, there's been new revelations, or not revelations per se, but new updates on Caden Lindstrom's status. He's back in playing for Medicine Hat, and he's played pretty well in the WHL finals. I think that's got to be a promising thing, obviously, for Columbus, but a promising thing for teams looking at Roger McQueen as a potential draft pick is seeing that Caden Lindstrom is able to bounce back and able to play well. That's something they're looking at, because Roger McQueen suffered the same injury. He has come back this season, which is a big difference. But yeah, I think Buffalo's the team to take the shot on the upside. You need a team that isn't really in desperate need of that prospect to really take them over the next step. But Boston is either in the very first year of their rebuild or is in a retool. Who knows what they really do this offseason. They have a lot of options. They still have Pasta, McAvoy, and Swaymans. You can make something work, but they sold hard. Who knows if they want to go down a full rebuild status or they want to quickly turn it around. Regardless, they don't have a lot of prospects. They don't need an instant impact guy. They don't need a surefire number 1 guy. Roger McQueen is the guy who could be a future number 1 centerman in the league, a great power forward, or who knows what happens with the injuries. Risky player, but I like the fit in Buffalo. Anaheim here at 10. I think if McQueen makes it here, I could see Anaheim taking the shot on him here. They like their big power forwards, although it would be an interesting fit. I think they have too many, which is why I have them going Jake O'Brien, another player who I think they could take, who's been a big riser. Brady Martin, again, fits the bill of what Pat Verbeek has been looking for in Anaheim and has been drafting for these past few years. But I think you got to switch it up at some point and fill it on a different need. Get a different playmaker in there alongside, Leo Carlson. Then you can put 1 in each top 6. But I think Jake O'Brien, you move him to the wing with the centers you have, and you have a great playmaker on your hand. Probably, arguably one of the best playmakers in this draft altogether. A really solid player. Has some things to work on, bulk up on with his frame. He's got a decent frame right now. I think he's 6'2", but bulk up a little bit, get a little more physical, add some muscle to his frame, and add a couple different layers to his game beyond the playmaking. But in terms of a pure playmaker, there's very few players in this class that can match his skill as a playmaker. At number 11, my Pittsburgh Penguins, unfortunately falling 2 spots. Very, very unfortunate. I was hopeful they could win the lottery. They were so close. They had one of those balls that was coming out for that last one. One of them would have been a Pittsburgh one to get up to Matthew Schaefer. But at 11, it's really tough because, again, I think you're starting to hit a little bit of a steeper decline in terms of the talent after you get out of this top 10. I'm taking Jackson Smith. I think he's the last player in this tier. This sort of 8 to 11 tier of players, in my opinion, in the way I've kind of been evaluating these players. But Jackson Smith had a real good surge at the end of the year offensively and has played really well defensively all season long. So I like the fit here. Pittsburgh just needs the best player available to keep building up that prospect pool. And I think Jackson Smith's a great guy to do it, to pair him alongside the likes of Harrison Brunick and Owen Pickering on that back end. For number 12, you get the New York Rangers, who still unknown whether they'll give up this pick or not. They have until, I think it's 48 hours prior to the draft to let Pittsburgh know what their plans are. And still an unknown. They could go either way. It really depends on what they feel their chances are to making this pick worse next year. Because you don't want to give up on McKenna Ball, and that's really what the evaluation will be. Can we be a playoff team next year? If we think we will be a playoff team, then they can have this, or we can keep this pick, and we'll take our pick next year, and it won't be a McKenna Ball. But if they give Pittsburgh this pick, and then it's just a complicated situation with them. You got to evaluate what you're going to do next year, and if you end up keeping this pick and then being forced to put an unprotected first in the year that has Gavin McKenna in it, it's going to look really bad. Whereas if you give away this pick, and you keep next year's, I think it's probably the safer option for them, because realistically, a 12th overall in this draft class, it's nothing crazy. And if you end up, you only have the 21st pick next year, you make the playoffs and win a round or something, you're not too mad at moving back 12 to 21 in a stronger draft class for that matter in 2026. So I think if I had to bet right now, Pittsburgh will be making this selection. Regardless, I have the same player going here, and that's Brady Martin. I think Brady Martin is really, really talented, and I think he's a player that is exactly what NHL GMs covet and what they've been looking for in draft. You always see the big draft risers on players that are built like this. Physical, big, who can shoot and create offensively. The offensive upside mixed in with the physicality and the grit and the high motor, that is Brady Martin in a nutshell, and is exactly what NHL GMs overpay for at the deadline. It's what they've been trying to draft for years. They're trying to draft the next Tkachuk brothers, the next Tom Wilson, those styles of players, the guys who you can put in your top 6 and they'll produce, but they can also have an impact outside of just pure goal scoring. Brady Martin is that. Scouts, Cam Robinson, elite prospects, had tweeted out during the U18s that Brady Martin hits like he would be a top hitter in the NHL right now in terms of just how physical he is and just the skill he has in terms of his body checking ability, which is just really, really impressive for an 18-year-old. And he also has a really lethal shot, really, really good shooter. He's got other areas of his game to work out and little kinks here and there, but overall, I mean, this is exactly what NHL GMs want in a player, and I think he's going to be a big riser, similar to like a Beckett Seneca. Similar build, similar style. I think Seneca had a little more skill to his game and not as much physicality, but it's still the big body who's willing to throw it around is exactly what GMs want, and I think he'd be a good fit. I have him for the Rangers here. I think Pittsburgh will make this exact same selection too. At 13th overall, the Detroit Red Wings grabbing Lyndon Lakovic, another great power forward type. More skill than Brady Martin, different levels of power forward per se, but I think Lyndon Lakovic has got a lot of skill, did a lot of good work for a really, really rough Moose Jaw team this year, and was just a really impressive season for him this year. I think I could see a world where he's a really solid top 6 guy moving forward for the Red Wings. I think Steve White's tough to predict. He's tough to it's tough to anchor him down on a pick and what he will do, but I really do think this is the right selection. I think it's a player that they need. They need some more offensive punch. They won't take a defenseman. They have their defense of the future locked up for who knows how long, with probably next 10 years with Edvinsson, Seider, and Sandin Pellikka. But Lyndon Lakovic gives you a little more offensive punch. Maybe he can be your centerman alongside Lucas Raymond or below Dylan Arkin, depending on how long it takes to come up for Lakovic, but I like the fit here. At 14, you have Keyshawn Atchison going to the Columbus Blue Jackets here. I really like Keyshawn Atchison a lot. Really, I think he's another guy who could rise a lot because of the way he plays. The physicality he plays with is exactly what GMs want. They want those big guys who, in playoff hockey, we're seeing it, can go out, lay the body, and play good, solid defensive hockey. That is Keyshawn Atchison. He's an absolute game wrecker, a little more chaotic of a hitter than Brady Martin is, just kind of runs around and just wreaks havoc, but has a really good defensive side to his game as well, and I think Columbus would be happy to have him. Vancouver Canucks at 15. I'm taking Braden Coots. I love Braden Coots' game. He's a smaller guy, so he doesn't have the power forward type as like a Brady Martin or a Lyndon Lakovic or those types, but he plays with a high motor and he forechecks and back checks and plays all levels of the ice hard all the way through. Similar to Victor Eklund in the way he plays, but I like the way Coots plays. He plays with a high motor, high drive, high intensity, and it works really well. He was the top scorer for Canada, the U18s this past, it was about a week ago when I'm recording this. 12 points in 7 games there. Really solid player, and I think he has really good potential as like a surefire middle 6 centerman who can just drive a line and really just be the primary forechecker who just creates a lot through his high effort. At 16, Montreal's first of back-to-back selections. If they won a round, it wouldn't have been back-to-back, but since they ended up losing to Washington in the first round, they will have back-to-back picks. But this one is Calgary's, the last pick out of the lottery, and I've got Montreal taking the shot on Carter Bear, another injury risk player. I have him falling quite a bit compared to where I had him last mock draft, where I had him going to Utah at 14. Now there's not that team there that's able to take that shot. Montreal can take that shot. You got a really stacked up prospect pool. You could take a shot in a guy like Carter Bear and see what you have. If he can recover from the Achilles injury and still be his same guy, the same guy that we had and we saw at the start of the year for oh my God, for Landon Dupont and the team there over in Everett. Blanked on the name for a good minute there, but Everett Silvertips really used him well, and he was a real dominant piece for that team. That's the reason they were so good at WHL, and you could see when their offense took a hit when he left, or when he went down with injury. The Habs have so many prospects in their system, especially up front. They could definitely afford to take the risk on Carter Bear and potentially have another top 6 winger to play up in the future. Their second pick at 17, I am taking another big riser out of the U18s. Sasha Boumediene broke the record for most points by a defenseman in the U18 tournament. He had 14 points in 7 games. He was unbelievable for Sweden. And this is kind of just confirming what people had expected of him. The biggest cause for concern after a season at BU was, well, he didn't really put up the point production we were expecting. And the contrast to that was, well, he's playing behind Willander and Hudson and not getting much power play time, or I don't think he got any power play time really with those two, and really just wasn't getting those prime offensive minutes. Goes to Sweden, he's the number 1 defenseman there, gets prime offensive minutes, and lights up the score sheet. I think it was a big tell that it was actually the fact that he just didn't get the high value minutes at BU. That's why his production was low, not so much of he didn't fit in. Because he played a really solid defensive game, was not a liability by any means for BU. He just didn't get to show off his offensive skill set. Did that perfectly at the U18s, and he's going to be a massive riser because of it. For some reason, teams have been passing on these types of defensemen. Boumediene's not exactly, small like a Cole Hudson is, but still in that same sort of offensively minded guy. But I think he should be a big riser after this performance. Plus, given he is a good size, he's good defensively, I think he'll be a big riser, similar to Brady Martin and some of the other guys I've mentioned. And there's guys further down the board as well who I think are big risers as well after this tournament and the CHL playoffs. But yeah, Boumediene, 6'2", 183. He's got your prototypical size. He's got offensive skill. He got a good defensive game. What's not to like here? I really like Boumediene, and I moved him up quite a bit in my rankings after that performance of the U18s. But it's not just because of that. It's also, knowing what you knew beforehand with the way he was utilized and deployed at BU, and then you see how when he's deployed in a bigger role, jumps up really well. So it's the combination of it all, and I think it really just solidified what you had thought of Boumediene and takes away some of those question marks you may have had in his game. At number 18, Calgary Flames via the New Jersey Devils, the Jacob Markstrom trade last year. The Devils, Markstrom was amazing for them, but they ended up getting bounced in the first round anyways. I've got the Flames taking Justin Carbonneau. He's flipped quite a bit in this mock compared to last one. Still a great player, really good scoring touch, as I mentioned last time. One of the top scorers in the QMJHL, one of the top scorers in the CHL in general in terms of goal scoring production. And it's exactly what Calgary needs. I'm taking Ben Kindle last mock, another goal scoring guy, shoot first, really good production. Carbonneau is like that, but bigger, stronger, and more skilled. Having him fall to you is exactly what Calgary needs. They need that goal scoring punch in their pool and in their future. This is what that could bring. That's what Carbonneau can bring to the lineup for this Flames team. St. Louis Blues at number 19. I'm taking Logan Hensler, guy who had a disappointing year at Wisconsin, all things considered, but is still a really solid and stout defenseman. St. Louis has Theo Lindstein in the system. That's really their main defenseman in the system, really their only guy. And you have Philip Broberg, who looked really comfortable in St. Louis in a big role this year. You also took Adam Jiricek last year, who's solid, but has had a bit of a bumpy development so far. But right now their decor is old. It's Broberg and everyone else is 30 plus in that decor. So you throw in Hensler alongside, maybe Jiricek and Lindstein if they can develop as well. You have yourself your top 4 of the future there, a lot of really solid defensemen. No real elite guy, but Broberg looks really promising. And then, you have all these other guys who are good complementary pieces around that, and I think it would be a good set to your decor. You have a lot of great forwards coming up. Hensler is, arguably one of the best players on the board, and also just, I think, a really solid fit here for what their pool needs. Columbus, their second pick of the first round via Minnesota, the David Jiricek trade. I've got him taking Cole Reshny. I've got another big riser, a guy who there might not be a player in this draft class who did more for their stock in the last month and a half than Cole Reshny. Tore up the WHL at the end of the season for Victoria, and then goes to the playoffs, does the exact same thing there, and then goes over to the U18s, and has 8 points in 5 games there, and was just really, really solid. Like, really just has been on an absolute tear these past couple months, and I think he's a big riser for my rankings. I think Columbus takes the shot on him here. Really great player, and good fit there in Columbus. Ottawa Senators at 21. They gave the Leafs a run for their money in those last 3 games there after going down 3-0, but ended up falling short regardless. The question now still remains: will they use this pick? Will they end up losing this pick because of the Dodonov punishment? That answer is still unknown. I heard a report about a week or so ago that Ottawa might end up using this pick, like selecting here, because they've just been trying to negotiate with the NHL to try and lessen the punishment, and they think the longer they can draw it out, maybe the better chance they have. So they don't want to cut off their negotiations just to get rid of this pick, and they want to keep going. And whether or not the pick next year is better or worse than 21, they just want to have that extra time to try and lessen the punishment, is apparently reported there. I don't know if that's the right strategy. I would personally give up this pick. It's a weaker draft class. You don't want to give up your McKenna ball. You don't want to be forced to do that if something ends up happening and seasons can go off the rails. You look at some of the teams this year that ended up at the bottom: Nashville, Boston. If you told me those 2 teams would be picking top 10, would have called you pretty crazy. And things can happen like that, especially with a young team like Ottawa. A couple injuries, couple bad seasons, couple slumps. All of a sudden your season's off the rails. So you don't want to be forced to give up that pick. So I think you just play it safe, give up 21. But regardless, the decision has not been made yet. I believe they also have up until 48 hours prior to the draft to make that decision, similar to the Rangers. I've got them taking Cameron Schmidt, same as last time. Good middle 6 guy, smaller guy, but still really, really talented player, and has a lot of drive to his game. Really, good scoring, good touch. A lot of great things about his game, but yeah, 5'7", so he's not quite the physical piece, but I think he's got that finesse and that touch that maybe Ottawa could be missing to try and boost up that scoring in the middle 6 or the top 6 for that matter, if he ends up performing up to that level. But I think it's a solid player who can add some finesse and touch to that Ottawa lineup. At number 22, the Philadelphia Flyers via the Colorado Avalanche, the Sean Walker deal last year. Really unfortunate ending for the Avalanche against, I think, the best team left in the playoffs in Dallas Stars, and Mika Rantanen has been on an absolute tear, and they ended up getting bounced out despite massively buying at the deadline, going over so many roster changes. They're in for an interesting offseason for sure. But the Flyers have this pick. I think the Flyers will be the team to take Ravensburgen, and I mentioned that last time, and I had them taking it with the first pick, which was down at 24. Now their pick actually rose up to 22 after the Avalanche got eliminated. And looking at the teams behind them, I am taking the shot on Ben Kindle, who I think is a step above anyone left on this board for skaters. And I don't think the teams below them will take a goalie, and I think they're willing to take that risk. I would be willing to take that risk personally, so I'm taking Ben Kindle. Good scoring forward for Calgary in the WHL this year. Really talented player. I think he's just got that great scoring punch and can be a good solid fit for them in their lineup down the middle 6. Similar, they have a lot of players like that, but I think the big thing here is Ben Kindle to me is a big, like a decent chunk above the players on this, like, left on this board. Like, below him you have Cameron Reed, Malcolm Spence, William Moore. Those kinds of guys to me are just they're a tier break below what you get in Ben Kindle. So I think Philly just takes the shot on the best player available here and hopes Ravensburgen makes it back to them. And again, like I said, looking at the teams here, I think it's highly likely. We'll start with Nashville, their pick from Tampa Bay in the Tanner Jeannot deal. Again, I'm taking Cameron Reed. They took a good forward up front at the top of the draft. Grab yourself a solid defenseman to add to Tanner Molendyk back there. I think Cameron Reed's a really solid piece, really solid offensive defenseman, and could be a good fit in Nashville. Again, you're just kind of rounding out that prospect pool here. You have Joakim Kamel and some other pieces up front that are solid. And I think David Edstrom there after the Askarov trade. On the back end, you have Molendyk. Add Cameron Reed in there. Just kind of, again, I think this is the best player available, and a good fit in the prospect pool for what they're looking to do and round it out. The LA Kings losing to the Oilers yet again. What a shocker. They looked like they had that series on a wraps after 2 games, and they just lost 4 in a row because of Kevin Pickard. But now they have another pick here. Fired Rob Blake. I think this pick could be on the move, or if they want to try and go all in to win, or they could be trying to sell off and reset But with his pick up 24, Malcolm Spence here, he recently committed to Michigan, I believe. He's going to be leaving the CHL. I think it's good for his development. He kind of stonewalled the CHL level. I wonder if playing at Michigan will help him take that next step in his development. I like that choice for him. And for LA, I think he's a real solid fit, a good high drive, high motor guy. There's a lot of players like that in this draft class because it's not as high of a skill level in this draft class. A lot of high motor, high drive, good character guy. That's kind of that's the type that is prevalent in this draft class, and it's a thing GMs covet, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think Malcolm Spence can be a good fit in LA long term, next to the likes of Liam Greentree and Quinn Byfield up front. And just a solid pick, a solid player who was really highly touted coming into the OHL and just kind of never took that next leap. If he takes that leap, this is going to be a real solid piece for the future for the LA Kings. Then at 25, another Calgary Flames pick, this one via the Florida Panthers, and this team, they're not going to take Ravensburger, that's the big thing for Philly, who's waiting here with their pick coming up at 27. That's kind of the way I was looking at it through this draft class. They have Dustin Wolf, so they'll take someone else. William Moore, good production, good playmaking centerman here. Again, they need some offense to this team. They need to find ways to create this offense. Another guy who was a big riser after the U18s, him and the likes of LJ Mooney, who was really good. Mikey Burchard was solid. Cullen Potter had a really good tournament as well. So some good guys. Jack Murtaugh was pretty solid as well. I think the big risers were William Moore and LJ Mooney. Both were big with 11 points in 7 games for US, and were probably the best players on the ice whenever they touched the ice in the tournament. But yeah, Calgary takes him. He rises up from 31 in my last mock all the way up here. He was a riser on my board, and I think Calgary sees that offensive upside, takes a shot, get a good guy down the middle to help facilitate the offense. Carolina Hurricanes at 26. I could see a world where Ravensburger does go here, but I think they're probably better off taking, if they want to take a goalie, there's some good goalie depth in this class down the board in the 2nd and 3rd rounds with the likes of Jack Ivankovich, who I'm in love with, Alexei Medvedev, a couple other solid Russian goalies, Frolov, solid. I mean, Gabriel Dagla has kind of fallen off, and there's some other guys down the board here that aren't quite as solid, but still, there is a couple of good goalies down you can get in the 2nd and 3rd round. If that's what Carolina wants to do, I think that makes more sense for them. Because Kochetkov is still promising. He hasn't really stepped up and taken a jump that you hope. Freddie Anderson, though, looks amazing. It's more a matter of how long do you have Freddie Anderson for, the injury concerns and just the age concerns. But he's been amazing for them this playoffs, been arguably the best goalie in the postseason. I think it's him or Jake Ottinger. It's one of those two, which is kind of crazy to think about. So it's not really a desperate need. I'm taking Blake Fiddler, a big physical defenseman, playing over in the Edmonton Oil Kings. Fits that kind of type that Carolina likes, the style they like to play, that big type. They like to play a physical, hard-nosed defensive game. I think Fiddler can be that kind of player for them, and is a good culture fit in Carolina. And then back to Philly, they get their pick from the Oilers, who was traded for pick 32. The Oilers traded back up into the 1st round to get the pick from Philly, and they traded their first this year. And then Philly gets Joshua Ravensburger, the best goalie in the class. Honestly, it's not crazy to me if you thought that right now, as just a pure player, not as a prospect, Ivankovich was a better pure goalie. The problem is Ivankovich is, I think, 5'11 or 5'10, so he's undersized. Ravensburger is 6'6". In terms of prospects, Ravensburger has a much higher ceiling and a higher likelihood of becoming an NHL level goalie because of that size. He fits the build to a T for an NHL goalie. And also was really, really good this past year, had a really good season. So I like Ravensburger a ton, and I think Philly needs that surefire goalie. They have a lot of they just have a lot of pieces in net in their prospect pool. No one that's like you can really confidently say can be your future number one, but a lot of good 1Bs is the way I look at their pool. So maybe they don't go this direction, because you do have Sam Erson's solid, but again, not a bona fide number one. Igor Rajin has been decent in the KHL. He's actually had a pretty good year in the KHL. So his season pivots them away from a goalie. You have Fedotov, who's solid, or not really solid, and not even a prospect. He's a lot older and didn't have a great year. Hasn't played as expected since coming over from the KHL. So they really and they have Carson Bjarnason, that's the other one, who they drafted in the second round 2 years ago now, who's, again, solid, but not quite enough, in my opinion. So grab Ravensburgen. I think he's a really, really talented goalie prospect, and I think he can be the number one for a team down the line here. Down to the final 5 picks, we got the San Jose Sharks via the Dallas Stars. San Jose, interesting spot here now. You're probably looking defenseman because you didn't get one at the top. You're not really getting an elite guy that you're hoping for to really be the number one of your pool. But regardless, I'm taking Charlie Trethewey. Again, my opinion, the best defenseman on the board. And San Jose needs to take the shots. Just when you don't have the top guy that you're hoping for, it's about throwing the darts now. Hit the dartboard and see what sticks, see what guy can maybe break out and turn into that number one defenseman or that top pair defenseman that you're looking for. But I think Trethewey's got that, not that kind of potential, but I think he'd be a surefire top 4 defenseman along that right side. Chicago Blackhawks at 29. Just keep taking shots offensively. They have the other side of the spectrum. Chicago's got their D-core locked up. Great D-core. San Jose has their forward core locked up. Great forward core. They both need to take shots in the dark, basically, at the other side of the puck to try and find some good fits. Chicago does have some good pieces up front that are coming up that have looked promising. I still have been thinking Cullen Potter. Big riser, great season this year in the NCAA at Arizona State. And had a really solid U18 tournament as well. I think he's a really good fit. Gives you more flexibility down the middle. Odds are someone's moving to the wing. Him, Moore, Nazar, Bedard. So something will give, and you'll shake things around there. But I think he'd be a real good middle 6 piece for this Blackhawks team going forward. Nashville Predators up again, taking the high upside swing in Jacob Wozniak, another guy who is just he slipped a little bit. Didn't quite have the promising season people were hoping of him, but still had a pretty good season. It's a good build, really solid all-around player, and I think there's some upside here that Nashville can tap into if they can unlock it in him. I like the fit there. At 31, another guy, high upside, who slipped down the board here, Ivan Ryabkin. I think Washington's a really good fit to try and get, they got a good culture going there. They've really built a solid culture these past few years. If they can, really make Ryabkin care and devote some time and get him to really hone his skills and take it seriously. Like he's had some real character concerns. Sometimes he's on the ice a little lazy. Washington, I think, is a good fit to kind of get him out of that, break him out of that spell and really turn him into a top tier forward, which he can be. He has the skill and the talent to become a top 6 forward. It's more a matter of will the team that drafts him be able to push him to that level, and I think Washington is a good fit to do it. And then finally, 32nd overall, the Winnipeg Jets grabbing Milton Gashin, another guy who had a pretty solid tournament for Sweden at the U18s, and has been a slight riser up the board, but he's going to fall in this 25 to 35 range in the draft. Winnipeg gets a good piece here, can be a good centerman, not as soft as Swedes are typically portrayed. That's always the knock on a Swedish player. People are always questioning, they can't play physical, because that's what the Swedish teams are built like. They always have that elite skill and finesse. Milton Gashin plays with some edge and some chip and some physicality up front. He can be a good centerman for you down the line who plays really well at both ends of the ice. So that will do it for this mock draft here. This has been mock draft 2.0. I'll likely have definitely at least one more. Obviously, going to have one coming out right before the draft. Maybe we'll stick one in between there at some point. A couple other things I'm thinking of working on. Obviously I mentioned I'm doing my prospect pool rankings. Kind of put that on hold to make sure I got this out. I saw the NHL quarter century team was released, and I saw a post or a video from M Bon Hockey, Mike Bartner, his YouTube channel. He made a video talking about fixing that roster, and I've had some discussion about, this roster wasn't well constructed for the top 25 players of the last 25 years. So I might make a video on that as well. But yeah, definitely gonna have the prospect pools coming out over the next month or so, working through that slowly. There's no real rush to do that. I'm just trying to get it out before the draft, and that'll be that. But definitely some other content will be coming out shortly, so stay tuned for that. Be sure to like and subscribe to see more, and I will see you in the next one.